Hello, welcome back to What a Future. Bit of a change this week. We have a familiar face back with us. We have David Fribbins, director of Randy and AI enthusiast. What we're going to be discussing today is there's a lot of change going on at the moment with regards to AI. And so we wanted to put together a bit of an emergency podcast to say, what is this doing? What is this doing to work now? What is it going to do to work in future? And we thought that a discussion on that would be useful. Look, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer that we're going to go into this with sort of full gusto. There's going to be some kind of intellectual discussion going on, and by nature that can sometimes lack a bit of emotion. I just wanted to kind of get that out there in advance so that we can really power through the issue. Look, David, it's such a pleasure to have you back. Thanks so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So, look, we haven't got our usual script. Everyone knows those questions, but we're going for something new. I suppose let's try something similar. What's the biggest sort of change in the short term with regards to AI that you can see affecting people in the world of work?
Oof, okay, we went big with the first question. I like that.
Go hard or go home.
I think it's really going to be impossible to predict it because I think we're all slightly skewed towards generative AI. So what we've seen, what's become consumer facing very quickly is obviously ChatGPT, Bard, and then we're also looking at Midjourney and some of the image generation. And they gain a lot of attention, and obviously they're all over social media because people are using them. So we get a lot of this, what I'm going to call now dumb AI. It's very much not dumb, but just looking at it it doesn't have any understanding or knowledge of what it's saying. It's creating based on pattern, not cognition. Um, so AI currently in the forefront is not really advanced smart AI.
So just to quickly clarify that, the way that I tend to look at that is that these AI tools, as you mentioned, ChatGPT, Bard, etc., they're fundamentally trained on being as convincing as possible, not on
Yeah,
being as right as possible. And I think that's the distinction here, isn't it? That they can give an answer that looks to a human to be the right answer, but quite often we've people call them hallucinations. I call them
yeah.
bullshitting. They come out with all sorts of things that are really not not true, but that's not what they're there to do at this point.
Yeah, I've heard it quite well described through a thing called a DIKU. So
Right.
data, information, knowledge, understanding, and that's almost the steps of AI. So the first thing is can it absorb data? The second is can it put information together in an order that looks like it can understand the data? K is obviously knowledge. Does it actually have knowledge of the information? So this would be cognition. So if you tell me there's a ball, I know what a ball is. I can actually process that information. I can think about what you do with a ball. There's lots of other neural pathways for me with a ball. The AI at the moment doesn't do that. All it does that with is other words that are normally associated with the word ball. And so it can create a sentence that will convince you that it knows about a ball, but it doesn't.
Yes.
Um, and then understanding is the whole next level, which is the real advanced stuff of is it actually able to have real cognition? Um, and
And
yeah, like I
is an
said,
example there that could it create a new game to do with that ball? It fundamentally understands how the ball works, how it operates, how it interacts with the world around it, and therefore it can create a new use for that ball. Is that fair to say on the understanding?
I think so at the moment, what you would get from generative AI could create something new, but it would be an
Of
accident.
course. Yes,
And
sure.
it wouldn't be able to explain to you why it's new or how it's new and be able to actually have a conversation with you about it. It would just look like it is.
Yes.
But the whole thing is fake. It's not real at all. It's entirely fictional. At the moment. That's the key preface there is at the moment. Um, yeah, the next stage on would be can you have a discussion about it and can you change its mind? And at the moment, yes, you can, but you're not really changing its mind. It's just giving you the next set of words that fit a pattern or the next image that fits a
Yeah.
pattern that
I'm
is best
sorry, I'm
connected
just a
to it.
chatbot trained by. We've all
Exactly.
seen that one.
It's not really understanding what it is that's there. Um, And so that's what's consumer facing. That's what we, and even you and I are probably mostly at the front of that, me more than you because you do have your own AI models. But what you interact with is that. So everything you then predict that's going to happen is based on that. So you start thinking about chatbots and customer service and these things that can take place that are human interactions, that look like human interactions, that are simple exchanges of information.
Mm-hmm.
And as you've touched on, the main issue at the moment is hallucination, which is not what humans would call hallucination. It's basically where the AI goes off piste and comes back with a response that's completely irrelevant, or completely wrong but sounds relevant. That's called a
Yes.
hallucination. Um, However, behind the scenes, when you take it away from generative AI, when you start looking at AI that is more autonomous intelligence and the other developments going on elsewhere, you start to move into a scarier territory because we don't know what's going on. It's all being done under lock and key, and we won't know that it's even being used until it's announced that it's being used. An example I was thinking of earlier about this when I was thinking about what's the scariest thing I can imagine is actually something like Facebook, which is the algorithms, the algorithmic presentation of information from Facebook, the way you actually get your newsfeed filled, is AI. It's just not generative AI. Well, it is. It's just not generative AI like ChatGPT.
Yes.
All it's doing is presenting you user-created content that it knows you're interested in and that it thinks is going to elicit the response from you that it wants, which is engagement and time on the page, because that's how it generates ad revenues. Now, the scariest thing for me is if you introduce a generative AI to Facebook, an algorithm that knows me personally, that knows all of my touch points, exactly what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for, that is able to then generate content and fill my head with that content because it knows it's what I want to see. We're already in a post-truth world, but we might be heading towards a post-truth world because AI has no boundaries. It's not, I mean, it doesn't have Asimov's laws written into it of do not harm humans because as much as that's a brilliant law, it's just too, it lacks too much nuance to really understand what does harming a human mean. So it, there are other forms of AI that are significantly more, they're not necessarily malicious, but they have significantly more potential to be damaging and dangerous that haven't really got that forefront and people knowing about it because they're not engaging with it in a way that they're knowingly engaging with it. And Facebook's just one example. I'm not suggesting they're going to turn into the evil corporation that run the world through information, but I mean, if we're going to be looking at 1984, that would be a ministry of truth, right
Yes.
there, that has absolute access to the majority of people on the planet, and it can just produce content that gets its result instantaneously. It is quite scary, just how much that could permeate into society.
And I think we've seen this before, haven't we? Just without the AI element. If you think back to Cambridge Analytica,
Yeah,
that data is available, allowed political parties to push their narrative to people that they knew it would affect. And
yeah.
I think we all like to think that we are immune to that, but the sad fact is we're not. None of us are. We all. I've been reading Thinking Fast and Slow recently, which is a spectacular book. I recommend it to anyone. But Daniel Kahneman talks a lot about anchoring and the various effects that we our system one, our quick thinking brain sort of sees and thinks. And actually, this is how we operate most of the time, and we are very vulnerable to these things. Now, cognitively, we may be able to think our way through it. The problem is we're not thinking about it enough because we're human and that takes effort. And this is, I think, where it gets scary, as you say. I don't know about you. My feeling is that what we shouldn't necessarily worry too hard about right now is a Terminator style AI apocalypse. Oh my god, it's going to take over the world. What we should worry about is AI in human hands.
Yes.
It's the power to do the things that we've already seen humans do, such as those sorts of things. I'm curious to sort of bring this a little bit back to kind of day to day life and work, and where you think this sort of underlying change. I'm taking the kind of basic idea of what you mentioned there as kind of inserting another layer under the language model that has some understanding beyond the language model. We're seeing this with Project Gemini, Google taking what they've done with DeepMind, who built the Go AI and the chess AI that are now some of the best in the world, beat the grandmasters, and taking what they've learned about that kind of understanding neural network, putting that behind a talking neural network, such that we can those things that you're talking about, understanding the data of what people are interested in, what they like, what they don't, etc., suddenly becomes very possible. And one of the things that concerns me about this is that this becomes at everyone's fingertips. Not that I distrust everyone, but that this means that everything could change. Like anybody's idea can suddenly become reality very, very quickly, especially in the digital space. And that potentially means that, change happens quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there are a million tangents we could go off on that one.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm just
See
trying
you
to
on the
think
other side.
which way to take that. I mean, in some respects, what you've just described is the metaverse. That is a potential metaverse output. We create our own realities. We live in it. I mean, the Matrix is the Matrix isn't based on that, but it potentially we each have our own Matrix. Yeah, obviously that's not that simulation theory. It's a whole different discussion. Interestingly, from what you've just described of the technology in everyone's hands, it's just made me think of a TV show called Dollhouse from Joss Whedon.
Oh yeah.
One of his less popular ones, but very good, which is the idea that everyone gets the ability to wipe a human being and upload a consciousness to it. And that once everyone has access to it, the whole world just goes into anarchy because everyone just starts wiping people and putting their own consciousness in, trying to replicate their own eternal life.
Right.
And yeah, I think power in the hands of the people. The socialist in me says, yes, brilliant, bring it on. People should have power because if they don't, it's just going to be wielded by somebody else in a government room and they're going to rule you, or a corporate room and they're going to own you. It's the technology is going to exist. Who wields it is, I mean, it's an ethical discussion. It's a philosophical discussion. Should it be controlled? Should it be? It's a really tough one. Everything in me sort of goes, let's be conservative with this. Let's protect people. Let's try not to let this get out of hand. Let's try and make sure that everyone can have useful uses of it. With the internet being a pretty good example of when you give everybody access to the internet, what you end up with is 98% of it full of porn. You don't end up with something particularly useful. You end up with humans' base instinct being pursued. And this technology enables that to a whole different level. I haven't actually looked at it. I would be quite interested to see what some of the search terms are, or what some of the questions and conversations actually look like with AI. Because I've never actually thought about that as an area to see just how when. Well, I think everybody who uses ChatGPT knows that they're being monitored, knows that that information is being captured, that the data is available, that it's being used to train other models. So although there's an element of anonymity, the reality is that there's always a track back. I would hope most people know that. Maybe assuming is a bit too strong of a word. But I'd be keen to know what that browser history looks like in those chats, just to see what people have done. Because yeah, it's interesting to see what does happen when you put power into people's hands. Just what will they do with it?
Yes, I think it's interesting, and that there's a sort of counter side to to that about sort of the idea of going slow. I mean, at the same time, our economy for right or wrong is built on value creation, and if giving tools to people, especially if they're cloud hosted and don't require strong, they don't require expensive computers, they require basically anything that connects to the internet. That of course does introduce its own privilege issues. If you can't afford a computer, then you're really struggling here. But that point aside, being able to put that sort of value creation tool into lots of people's hands is also, it would be arguably unethical to hold it back from them. And so you've kind of got this sort of duality where on the one hand you want to go slow because, oh my god, this could get bad, and on the other hand you want to go fast because it could solve everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, taking it away from AI and just looking at internet access. I know that Labour were looking in the last election at making it a universal right to have fibre internet, because there is a widening disparity that happens between those that have fast internet and those that don't in all of their attainment post-school results. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you do hold it back, what you end up actually doing is creating more disparity, that the gap between the ultra rich and those who don't have gets bigger. Which, I mean, arguably, we know that's already the case. In the last 3 years, that gap has got wider at a rate that's never been seen before. So we are already in that place, and AI potentially or likely is actually going to be an accelerant. It's not going to slow that down. Especially when you start to bring in access to other technologies that AI will be reliant upon. So right now, everything AI does is based on its computational capacity. The better your graphics card, the better your processing power, the quicker the response will be. Once we get into quantum computing and how expensive that's going to be initially, the disparity is going to get larger because the speed access is going to be quicker and faster. I mean, just a simple application, which isn't for everybody, but would be access to a stock market. If you're using advanced AI that's been modeled particularly around trading, looking at company accounts and their histories and what those trends look like. If you're a hedge fund right now, you're looking at massive data models on all of the historic companies and when their peaks and troughs are. And you're just going to use that. You're going to have the fastest access. You're going to be the first person trading before anyone else can because your data's getting there quicker than anybody else. And you're shorting something before anybody else even knows that it's happening because an AI has told you this company every 5 years has a trough. And that trough happens on this date. So on this date, short. And that's an advantage that's going to be brought through this technology that will be very, very restricted to an elite few that others just will not have access to.
Yeah, I mean, there's already of course, an element of David and Goliath in the stock exchange. There's plenty, day trading and I forget the word, casual trading has massively increased, and yet so has institutional trading, and so you've got this kind of issue going on already with the disparity between access to information and data, and I think that's really sort of interesting in its own right. I mean, I think what we can definitely say here, and it seems that we're agreed on, is that things are going to change, and it's going to be interesting and scary over the next few years with regards to where it could go. I think it's easy to sort of sit and think about what we've got now, but it's actually like the first thing is never the last. Look, what I suggest, David, is let's wrap it up there. Let's take what we've got, go away, have a think. Let's come back and let's start thinking about what that future could look like. Let's take some logical progressions off what we've just spoken about, and we'll see the viewers in the next video if that works with you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem at all. I mean, if I can throw a few at you immediately, that would be interesting ones as little lead-ins to the next one.
Go on, hit us with a quick sneak peek. 30
So
seconds.
healthcare. If we're having algorithmic AI that's looking at our behavior that knows who we are, predicting illness and predicting problems in our bodies will become significantly easier than going to a GP and saying, I've got this symptom. We will actually have advanced AI that can trigger those things and see those things in us before they've even happened.
I mean, how incredible will that be? And just connect it up to your smartwatch. Jobs are good.
Yep.
Crazy stuff. David, been a real pleasure. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fraser.
Hello. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do like and subscribe. If you want to find out more about me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Or if you want to find out more about what Wotter's trying to achieve, then do take a look at our website. Links to both are below. Thanks so much for joining us and looking forward to seeing you next time.